Let me go over your presentation stuff. They will be recorded on a video. Online students and on campus, we change that up from what Blackboard says because there's something going on in 2 weeks here that we won't tell anyone else about. It's a secret for the on-campus folks. But the only thing, this is the last lecture tonight, so all you have left is um, your presentations, finish up your journal, finishing up your Luke journals. You want to make sure you have 24 entries, one for every chapter, and 10 comments on someone else's post. You want to make sure that you will export that as a PDF. And so if you need help knowing how to do that, you go to File, Download as PDF on the Google Doc. All right, so remember you're not changing it, you're not doing anything else, you just do that, and then you need to save it as your name, like Matt Hutchins Luke Journal, something like that, 2016, whatever you want to call it. I just need to know that's yours and what it is. Then you'll upload that, so you'll have a place to submit it in the week 13 folder. So we skip next week for Thanksgiving, then week 13 is actually 2 weeks from now. But in that folder, you will submit your Luke journal. You don't have to submit your discipleship relationship journal because it's kind of a live thing. Just every time you post, you have submitted something. So for your discipleship relationship journal, it is technically by the syllabus due this Monday. It's coming Monday the 21st. But as I've said, I won't be checking them, looking at them until after Thanksgiving. Okay, so basically you have to the end of the day on Thanksgiving to get them done. Just get them done before Thanksgiving so you can enjoy your turkey. But those do need to be uploaded. Your 8th entry needs to be done by Thanksgiving. Anything that has been entered after Thanksgiving, points will be deducted for lateness. Okay. See what else do you have to turn in. Make sure your discussion board posts are all up to date, that you've done one for all of them. I've been working through grading those, and what I'll be doing here in a couple of days when I get them all done, I will send you. I do this every semester for all my class, so you'll get this as well. I basically send out a PDF, like a screenshot, basically, of here's the assignment and here is a grade. If there's no grade there, there's a dash. It means you didn't turn anything in. Okay. So what I'll let you do, if there's something that you missed a discussion board from week 3 or 4 and it just slipped your mind or whichever it was, I'll let you go back and you can do it for half the credit. Okay.
After it.
Yeah, after. So if you missed a discussion board from earlier in the semester, which it was due a long time ago, right? But if you somehow missed it, you forgot, or whatever it was, you can go back and get up to half credit for it. So if you do discussion board posts, you get a 90, you actually get a 45. So it's better than a 0. Okay. So you'll be able to see all your grades. I do it for every student. You look down, you'll see your grade number for everything that you have, and then you can see what you're missing. And basically, I just let you have to the rest of the semester, to the last exam day, to turn in anything for half credit. Okay. So I think that's it. So discipleship relationship journal, your Luke journal will be submitted via PDF. All that will be a submission thing. I'll have prompts for all this in the week 13 folder, so just be on the lookout for that. Your final exam will be online. It will have a due date. It will be open before Piedmont's actual exam week. Okay, so I'll have it open early, so that way you can actually go in and take it, several days before you need to really start cramming and stuff for your final exams on campus and for you online. So, any questions about assignments, wrapping up the semester, or anything else? Okay. So your subject relationship journal, like I said, 8 entries by Thanksgiving night. Test will be due. I think it's due by the Thursday of exam week, whatever that is. I'm not sure. I think it's like the 7th or the 8th, maybe, something like that. So it'll be due, whatever the syllabus says is when it's due, but it'll be open for a good while. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump into tonight's lecture. So this is the last lecture of the whole class. It's the third, as we're talking about the church planter. So we've been talking about disciple making and church planting, but we haven't talked as much about church planting specifically, right? But have we not talked a lot about foundational elements of church planting? I mean, we talked about understanding the mission of God, which is giving us a heart for why should we be about multiplying churches. We talked about disciple making, which is really the backbone, skeleton, foundation of getting a new church started, or revitalizing an existing church to get it back to health, or even possibly replanting an existing church to help it be more effective in the community. And so I was If you read back for some of our students who are in the class, especially some online, mentioned how they're really interested in revitalization and replanting. Well, anything that we've discussed about making disciples, maturing disciples, discipleship pathways, all those things help both existing churches and not yet existing churches. Okay? It helps you in a church planting sense, and it helps you. Your church is 195 years old, and you're trying to, just grow with lost people coming to Christ. Well, then everything we talked about in class can help you as well. So that's why we haven't really had to say in church planting, blah blah blah, because we've been talking in general about a lot of foundational elements. So tonight we're going to kind of wrap up with continue our last little conversation about the church planter. Remember we talked about how you're being assessed for church planting, you're assessing your calling. Maybe that was 2 weeks ago. Am I called to be a planter now in this place? Is my family on board? Is my church affirming it? Do I have the wiring and skills? That sort of thing. So am I called to it? Then last week we talked about the capabilities and strengths. Remember we talked about the APEST from Ephesians 4. We talked about prophet, priest, king, and how God has wired each of us for different roles within the church, and how they can lend and support, and what kind of church planter are you? Are you let's recap. Who remembers the 3 types or models of church planters from the Stetson reading? Who remembers those?
Missional.
Okay, there's a missional founding pastor. That was the second one. Apostolic and team. Exactly. All right. So that was really the big thing. So on test 3, know that part well. I'm going to give you that hint. And we will review for the test tonight as well. I want us to cover that so you know what to look forward to for the final exam. Anyways, so let's get inside. Now remember this statement from last week. A Christian leader leads from character before skill. So we say a church planter leads from character before skill. A youth pastor leads from character before skill. Character is far more important than skills in Christian leadership. Now, last week we talked a little more about the skill part, right? We talked a little more, how your strengths, how your giftedness, how God has wired you for role. That really fits into a lot of the skills that you're able to do, you're capable of doing, really stem from how God has wired you, spiritual gifting, and those sort of things. But tonight we're going to talk all about character. Now, if you notice on the little entry slide here, I have character and then istics is in parentheses, because we're talking about the characteristics of a church planter, but the root word of characteristics is character. Okay, so we actually want to discuss kind of both sides of this. We're talking about biblical character, but also how that leads into the characteristics of. And we're going to fit this for the role of a church planter. But know that this applies to Christians in general. Okay, this is not. So we're going to actually look at the biblical qualifications here. Anyone know the 2 passages, the biblical qualifications for an elder in a church?
1 Timothy 3.
All right, so you turn there. What's the other one? Titus. Brad, you turn there. Titus 1 or 2?
2.
Titus 2. All right. So I want you to read each. Nicomas, you read from 1 Timothy first, and then Brad, you read from Titus, and we're actually going to go and walk through them, but we're going to discuss and apply them more to our church plan. So, Nicomas, go ahead.
This saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to be an overseer, he desires a noble work. An overseer, therefore, must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, self-controlled, sensible, respectable, hospitable, and able to teach, and an able teacher. Not addicted to wine, not a bully, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not greedy. One who manages his own household competently, having his children under his control with all dignity. If anyone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of God's church? He must not be a new convert, or he might become conceited and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Furthermore, he must have a good reputation among outsiders, so that he does not fall into disgrace in the devil's trap.
All right, Brad.
This is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remains into order and appoint elders in every town as I direct. If anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and his children are believers, and not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination. For an overseer, as God's steward, must be above reproach. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered, or a drunkard, or violent, or greedy for gain, but hospitable, a lover of good, self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine, and also to rebuke those who contradict it.
So, in a lot of ways, that list is very, very similar. I think there's only like one or two points that are different. Yes, sir, Brad.
Children are believers. That was one that I read a few years ago, and asked my pastor. He didn't have a great answer, but what do you think about that?
So read the passage again.
If anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and his children are believers.
What translation are you using?
ESV.
ESV.
And I can see another one.
I'd just be curious to see what other. So, I mean, we could go down and discuss should is a pastor disqualified because he has a child who is an unbeliever. If that's the case, then my dad is now disqualified for ministry. I think if you are parenting well, you're leading your family well in the gospel, then yeah, your children should be highly compelled to come to Christ. But we have to I think what we really need to realize is sometimes that takes longer. Not all children may become believers during their childhood. So I would have to do a little more studying on what's going on in that passage, that children have to be believers.
I vote no.
Because, then you say, okay, well then if their child is 2 years old, then we have to all become Presbyterians like Matt.
Alright.
Even I wasn't a believer.
That
so
Bible
it's
says
true.
faithful children who cannot be charged with dissipation or rebellion.
Okay, so I think that probably warrant a little more study in the Greek, because I think the faithful children probably lends more. The idea is, and we're going to discuss it in a minute, but the idea is you're leading your family in a very gospel-centered way, and you're not sin-free as a family, because that doesn't exist. Okay, there's no such thing as a sin-free family, but you're handling sin biblically. You're handling discipline and leadership, and you're raising them according to how Proverbs gives numerous ways and ideas on
It's
raising
like you're
kids.
meaning to raise them in the covenant family of church.
Right.
It's Presbyterianism. Boom.
So, how about we get into it once we get to that, because we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Let's do it. So, those two passages are really, in a lot of ways, very similar, right? The listing is almost identical. There's some things just kind of worded a little bit differently because he's writing it to two different people, two different contexts, right? But he's overall writing the right thing, writing the same thing. But what did you notice at the very beginning of both of them? Above reproach is the kind of the key overarching element. So a lot of times, I mean, I've heard you've heard sermons, especially being here at Piedmont. You've heard sermons and chapel messages that try to break these down into like categories of qualifications, right? So these are the family ones, husband, one wife, and raises kids. These are the community one, above reproach, reputable, all those different things. This deals with, we try to categorize, and which is nothing wrong with that. I've heard some really good sermons. I have some notes somewhere in one of my journals about a really good sermon that kind of laid them out. But think about it, the overarching thing is the concept that this person is above reproach. So it's not that, and yes, we're talking a little more specifically about the role of an elder or overseer, as the text has said, which would fit a little bit more long-term, practically speaking, with the P&T, the shepherd teacher of APEST, because an elder overseer typically was one who was more of a shepherd teacher. Paul, though he would have met these qualifications, he was not the husband of one wife. But I don't also believe that you have to be married in order to be a pastor. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the idea is, as a pastor, you are leading other people towards spiritual maturity, towards Christ likeness. So if you are not doing these well, and aspiring to do these well, and working at doing it, though you're going to fail at some of them, not every single pastor, even the best pastor that has ever lived, has not met all these qualifications perfectly all the time, right? But the idea is, if you want to lead other people, you better have a good grasp on it, is the gist. So the thing is, who is above reproach? Who's not the super Christian of the church, but who is living godly enough, having a holy life that others can emulate and follow? That above reproach. Okay, so let's walk through 17 characteristics, biblical ones, yes, and then we got like another 13 for the practical characteristics. So, but we're going to go through these fairly quickly. Not going to spend a whole lot of time because you've heard, like I said, great sermons on these and whatnot. And it's right there. It's all come from these two passages, and then one of them comes from I think 2 Peter, 1 Peter, 1 Peter. So, anyways, this is basically a comparison between Titus and 1 Timothy. So, a pastor must be devoted to his wife, or a one-woman man. Now, the debate is, is this just anti-polygamy? Can a divorced man become a pastor? Those are legitimate questions. I seem to hear more often those who believe it has to deal with polygamy, that it literally is you just have one wife, you don't have two. I like the idea that they worded here, and this is all from, I have the link that's up there, this is not from me, it's from Scott Thomas, who used to be at Mars Hill before it imploded, but he's now at the Journey. He's at the Journey. But anyways, pastor must be devoted to his wife, or a one-woman man, and so, yeah, this would battle polygamy, but it also at the same time does help us to address the issue of can a divorced pastor, because I personally, and I'm kind of in the minority, I'm in the growing minority of who believe this, but I really do believe that office should have someone who has not been divorced. For other reasons, that has more to do with my theology of divorce than it has to do with what this is actually saying in the passage, if that makes any sense. So what I deeply believe about divorce is it lends into and speaks into how I apply this passage of Scripture. So any church that we plant, I would say that, and I'm also, if the divorce happens before they're a believer, I have a different set because they were lost in sin and completely lost. But if they come to Christ and they have been divorced before, I think that's okay. But if a Christian has been divorced, I believe that has disqualified them. But I'm not going to argue with a guy who has been divorced and is a pastor if things have been handled biblically. Okay, because some have different. There's the three reasons you can get divorced type thing: abuse, adultery. What's the other A? Abuse, adultery, and abandonment. I think Dr. Decker got. He's known for that. Oh, I hit an advertisement on this. I didn't want to. Man, I hate when I do that. Fat thumb got my timer. I gave the free version of the timer, so I had to put up with the ads at the bottom. So, anyways, so I believe those three, and my view on divorce has softened up a lot as you get into ministry. You get out of Bible college. You get into ministry. Now, I don't come from a divorced family, so if you do, you have a different idea of this than I do, and that's okay, right? Because you have different experiences. The more I was involved in ministry, the more that I did not become softer on what I believe Scripture says, but became more compassionate towards people who had been through a divorce. Because it's easy if you grow up in a family that has no divorce, you didn't have to feel it when mom and dad split and you're a child, and deal with having to go to two different homes on Christmas or switch holidays and all that sort of thing as a 12-year-old. If you've had to go through that, that's a very deep, painful experience. Okay. For me, who didn't have that, it was very easy for me to be here, and even be in my first few years of youth ministry, really thinking that, I was really hardcore, almost to the point of being nasty about it. Well, then I started dealing with people who were broken over it, and I wasn't helping a single person. And so God has really beat me over the head with saying, hey, divorce is a result of sin. It happens because people are sinful, but we're all sinful. Yes, you do not come from a divorce broken home, but you still come from, every home is broken in some way. And so for me, I've become a little bit softer in my application of this. I still, here's maybe the best way to say it. I strongly prefer that a pastor not be divorced. For a church that I lead, I can help speak that into the church I lead, but next door, I'm not going to cast judgment on the pastors over there if they happen to have some. I'm not going to do that. I'll still work with them and love them and not treat them as anathema. Okay. So, anyways, that's maybe a little bit more. But the idea is it's a one-woman man. I think this answers issues of pornography. If you battle pornography, you're not a one-woman man. You're a multiple-woman man. right? Adultery, of course. This is the idea is that you are devoted to the person that God has given you to love and cherish. Okay? So, next, a pastor's children must be in submission. They're not perfect, right? Scripture, if a man doesn't know how to manage his own family, he will not know how to take care of God's family. So the idea is, if he knows how to run his family, the church is just a bigger family, right? I mean, it's got people of different ages, different roles, different statuses, different kinds of relationships. So if you have complete chaos in your home, I'm not saying that everyone's perfect, of course. You're going to have kids that sin. Kirk will sin when I'm pastoring a church. He's going to do that. He's probably going to sin a lot publicly because I did as a kid, and so he's probably going to do that a lot. But the idea is, are you handling sin well? Are you disciplining your child in Scripture well? Are you a model mom and dad? Are you in above reproach? I mean, that's our key thing, above reproach. So whenever Kirk misbehaves in public, now right now he's kind of too young to really be reprimanded or anything because he has no clue. He thinks it's funny if I yell. So I don't even yell because, I just kind of let it go. He's clawing my face out and throwing spaghetti on the wall. It's like, well, that's not cute. It's really annoying, but he doesn't know any better. He's too young to know better. But the idea is that pastors must be in submission. Does the pastor's kids respect the role of their parent? Do they respect dad? So if that means he's a respectable father figure. Likewise, can he be the same for the church? Now remember, we're talking about church planting, right? A church planter. But in all of the models that we looked at, an apostolic type planter still needs to emulate and model these things. Because he's going to be raising up the first elder of the church, if that's the approach. If he is the more missional founding pastor who sticks around after the church is planted, then he definitely is fulfilling these and living these out on a daily basis. If he's part of a team, if he's the leader of that team, or if it's several leaders who are part of it, still should be emulating this. This also applies for ladies who are involved in church planting. All right? And yes, this is the qualifications for an elder, but as we're going to walk through and see, none of these are outside the Bible for the average everyday disciple. So it doesn't matter male, female, or position, whatever role you serve, every single believer should be discipled to live these things. Okay? The guy who is on the parking team at your church, he's not an elder, he's not a deacon, he has no other role, he helps to park cars, he should still be living out the idea of being a one-woman man. He should still trying to raise his kids in a good, godly way and be a good role model dad. So, anyways, you're not just for the elder, but remember the elders or the leaders must be above reproof in these. So let's go to the next one, the next few actually. A pastor is a faithful steward. All right, how do you steward what God's given you? So what are the things that we talk about people stewarding? Time, talents, and treasures, money. Yeah, we want to keep the T's alliteration when we say treasures, but yeah, time, talent, and your money. Okay, so your time, are you good at time management? As a pastor, especially as a planter, is key. I'm actually really bad. I am not a good steward of my time. I take on too many things, and then I get backed up, and I get so overwhelmed, I start procrastinating. I'm doing and doing and doing and doing. I'll pick a lesser thing that's like number 4 on the priority list because it's easier at the time because my mind's so overwhelmed instead of just focusing on number 1 and knocking it out. So this is one that I need some growth in. I'm actually getting some help right now in how to do this. But not only are you a faithful steward of your time, but are you a faithful steward of your finances? As a pastor, are you asking your people to tithe at least 10% and you only give 7%? Like, oh, well, it's just going back to my salary, right? That's a horrible way to think because you are a above reproach model. Will people be able to model after you and how you are stewarding? And I would also say, especially for a leader, for a Christian leader, a pastor, a planter, either Christian leader, how are you stewarding people? That's one of the biggest leadership lessons I'm learning right now in my internship at Calvary. I was having lunch with different laymen at Calvary Baptist Church who were former CEOs, CFOs, VPs of different things. So I was having lunch with a former vice president for General Electric. He had a big deal. His job was a big deal. And one of the things he taught me is that as he was managing directors of directors, I mean, he was at the top of the food chain. He basically just answered to the CEO. And so as he was doing that, he had to learn how to steward his people. And it was a concept I've never really heard about, but think about it. if you have an employee who works under you, you only get them for 40 hours a week. So how do you make sure that you're doing your part to make sure your employee is giving the best 40 hours a week? Because then they'll be fulfilled and the company is helped. So in the church, how are you stewarding people? Do you have people in the right role? You have some who are teachers right now who really should not be teachers. That's not their gifting. Have you stewarded them well? Have you really assessed their spiritual gifting to know in what capacity they need to be at the church? It takes a little more than just saying, if you have signed up on this sign-up sheet, you get this position. I mean, isn't that how we do it? There's a sign-up sheet in the back of the church, sign up and check off what you want to do, and then you get placed into it, and all of a sudden, guess what? Nokomis is really bad with kids. But he's volunteered for a year, and he's stuck there now. And Faith,
Why is it always for a year?
I don't know. Because Jesus only asks us to serve him for a year at a time. Kidding.
Oh, Jackson.
No, but maybe Faith should be in that position. So why didn't we assess them better, okay? So how are you stewarding people? We better move on. I'm going to hit my 45-minute goal. All right. A pastor must be humble, not arrogant. Now, this is a tough one in the church planting realm right now. Because you got, yes, for Kyle's admitting that he needs help. I do too. But think about it. When you think of a church planter, throw out some names. What are the names that you hear about a lot? Just throw them out. Mark Driscoll. When you think about a church planter here in the U.S., what are the names you've heard and thrown out? Just throw out. Ed Stetzer, yeah. He's a church planter now. He's
all the names I've learned in this class.
All the names you learned in this class, right. So it'll be very easy for those guys who have a platform, who are writing books, who are really well known, churches have 10,000 people in them. It's really easy for them to be arrogant. In the last 3 years, we've seen 3 mega church who all were planters. They all planted the churches that they were just released from. Three really big name ones, all because of something that had to do with arrogance. Now, Darren Patrick, he, I don't know the full details. They didn't disclose a lot like they did for others, but there was some type of inappropriate relationship with a woman. It wasn't sexual. He did not have a physical adultery or something, but there were some inappropriate questions, concerns, and I think it was he was not listening to the other elders who were trying to give him advice. He was a little bit more on the arrogant side, and so the elders of the church released him. I mean, that's tough because, sadly, there are many churches who are built around a personality. That's why don't ever plant a church and build it around yourself. Don't put your face on the billboard on the highway. That irks me to no end. All right? I won't go there. But don't do that because you're building yourself up as this celebrity. The church is built around you. So what happens when that person's gone? What happens to the church? All these people leave because they were coming more for a person. Okay? That's not every case. There are some mega churches you would never know the pastor. I was just at one in Oklahoma City this past weekend with a pastor whose name I have never known. Church has 6,000-7,000 people, planting churches all over the place, all over the world, doing crazy good things. And I've never heard this guy's name. He just flies under the radar, takes care of his people, and leaves them on Great Commission living. The church is successful in a lot of ways. And the whole I was in Oklahoma, the whole state loves him. The state knows him because of how he's taking care of his people. But he doesn't write the books, he's not on TV and that sort of thing. When it was Perry Noble, who was pastoring the largest Southern Baptist church, New Spring, which had, 14, 15 campuses across North and South Carolina, and I think even into Georgia, almost 30,000 members, I think they broke 30,000. Alcohol. He was let go for alcohol. All right. A little bit too, he thought he was a little too arrogant, thought he could handle his stress. So he handled alcohol. Here's the sad reality. I was sitting in a dorm room over here in Griffith Hall, my sophomore or junior year of college, literally heard one of the best sermons on alcohol. It was from him. And he was let go of his church because of alcohol. No one's immune to sin. No one's immune to it. But these guys are being lovingly disciplined and restored. That's the point. They're going to lovingly restore them. Yes, they fail, and it's really nasty, it's really sad. Now, the other one is Mark Driscoll, who we know a lot about, and I don't think he's fully repentant, but that's another conversation for another day. So,
I thought you were talking about Billy Graham's grandson.
Yeah.
Tulin Javijin. Yeah, that's another one, Tulin Javijin. His was
He was very
another,
influential for a long time.
He was a Coral Ridge Presbyterian. He took over from was it Martin Lloyd Jones? Who was the
No.
D. Martin? No, not something Martin.
He took over for 19, or how was it?
Yeah, but there was someone the one who founded Coral Ridge. This was like 2 generations ago. Anyway, I can't remember
Oh,
his
yeah,
name.
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. It's something like Jones, Martin, something. Anyways, so yeah, Tully Chavijan as well, inappropriate relationship with a woman. And so there you go, you have 4 who, and he was a planter who they actually merged their church with Coral Ridge. Coral Ridge wanted him to become their pastor. He had planted a church in the same city, Fort Lauderdale or somewhere.
Second time it's happened.
Yeah.
He had it one time when he was young in his ministry, and he repented of it, and
Right.
Presbytery was like, all right, well, we'll give you a gap, and after 5 years of rehabilitation, they let him go again, and then, like Nico said, not even 5 years later,
Yeah.
did it again.
So I mean, the reality is, those guys were striving to be above reproach, but sin is real. Satan, it goes after those guys like you would not believe, because those guys, all 4 of those men have helped mentor and train others to phenomenal levels. They've written books that have helped me personally. I did not throw away all the Mark Driscoll books because actually a lot of them have decent content. All right. So anyways, pastor must be humble, not arrogant, which is tough in a church planter rule. But you know, what if you aspire as a church planter or a pastor to be nameless, faceless, and traceless? You don't need a name. You don't need your face on the cover or anything, and you don't need to know. People don't need to know who you are. You're just faithfully serving your city and shepherding your people. All right. 5th. Anyway, I think this applies a lot to aspiring church planters, because they see church planting as this really kind of sexy idea of, you know, I'm gonna be all this kind of stuff. Really, I've heard the words church planting and sexy used way too much. All right, and I just used it twice. So, but you get this idea. This was me. I thought it was a cool idea before I actually knew it was an evangelism strategy. I thought it was just a really cool idea, and I was going to get known. And you know, I had a smoke screens, all kind of stuff, smoke machines as I walked from the stage, and be like, open the text, and lay it out. So, anyways, number 5, a pastor must be gentle, not quick-tempered. So, here's something: when you're dealing with lost people, if you have planted a church, or you're getting ready to, and you're evangelizing lost people, they are messed up. But here's the thing: do you have patience with lost people while they're sinning? So I've mentioned before some of the gay friends I've had, and when they're sharing stuff that they're involved with, your heart is breaking, and you want to just grab them, shake it out, and tell them to stop, because it's just self-destructive. Do you have the patience to walk through them while they're still sinning, because they don't know Jesus, they don't know what life free from sin feels like? Now, I have less patience for Christians who are habitually sinning.
Yes.
I do. I mean, we're still supposed to help each other. I just have less patience. I still try to have patience, realizing that I need patience. Jill, my wife, has had a lot of patience with me and my sin. I think I admitted here a couple of weeks ago that I recently have discovered that I'm a liar deep in my heart. And I am working through that. I am getting help from others and my wife to help me realize that, yes, I am a liar. I was lying to save face because I didn't want people to think negative of me. So, anyways, are you quick-tempered? Do you get angry easily? Or do you have a little more patience when things don't go quite your way? 6, the pastor must be sober, not a drunkard. All right, so we could spend the rest of the 11 minutes my timer has talking about our views of alcohol. And I'll just go ahead and say, here's what I believe. The Bible does not say that consuming alcohol is sinful. The Bible does not say that. The Bible is very, very clear that consuming alcohol to excess is sinful, bar none. I know, and here'd be my advice. I have never drank alcohol. The only thing that I've ever had that was alcoholic was some Tylenol in high school that had like 10% alcohol in it, and I had a little too much, and I was odd and weird. You can ask Jill, she remembers that night. I came to youth group, and I had taken that 10% alcohol Tylenol. It was like Tylenol extra strength PM times 4. I took like 2 doses of it because I thought I was cool, and then I took some other kind of cyanide. I had some crazy sickness, and I was loopy at youth group that night, and I don't know what all I did. I don't know what all I did. I think I had my clothes on. No, it wasn't that bad. But
I make fun of you.
here's why I have never consumed. I tell people this. I do not have a biblical reason or rationale for me not consuming alcohol right now. I don't have a biblical one other than I am submitting to authority. I work for a company, Piedmont. I'm still a teacher here, and I was a student at a school, Southeastern, that both had no alcohol policies. So biblically, I was responding and under submission of my elders or my rulers. I'm fine with that. But if I were not working, if I had a normal job that was outside of any kind of ministry, I still would not consume alcohol, but I don't have a biblical reason for it. But I do have two really strong practical reasons for it, which come from my spiritual walk. Number one, I don't trust myself. I do things to excess. And I did this the other night, Monday night. I was in Oklahoma City, and Jill and Kirk were supposed to go with me, but Kirk got an infection last Friday, so we had to cancel their flights and things. So I'm at the motel alone, and I'm like, well, it's like 9 o'clock, and I was craving ice cream, and so I go out, but I didn't have anyone to share the ice cream with, so I ate the whole time. And one night, I'm like, well, I'm flying out tomorrow. Okay, this was Tuesday night. I'm flying out tomorrow. I'm not gonna leave ice cream in this freezer here for no one else is gonna eat it. I can't waste it. It's like $5. It's Ben and Jerry's. It was dairy free, so I can have it. And so I buy it and I eat the whole thing. I think I was watching Harry Potter movie on TV. It was Harry Potter, Harry Potter or something else. The Iron Man, Harry Potter since came on. So, oh no, Jurassic Park, the new Jurassic Park. That's what I was watching. Harry Potter was not fine. Jurassic World. I was watching that on TV, eating this ice cream, and I'm like, I only got one bite left. I have no self-control when it comes to food. I really don't. All right. So I don't trust myself with alcohol. I don't know when I would stop. I think there are a lot of pastors who can stop. I have been under the leadership of a pastor, actually two, who consumed alcohol, and I've never seen them drunk, never known them to be drunk, and they did not have a drinking problem. I will not say how long ago this was, but I was belly up to a bar with two other pastors, guys I love and trust, and they were very clear that they were never ever going to be drunk, and they never have been, to my knowledge, and they seem to be trustworthy, and they were fine with it. Now, personally, I cannot be a pastor who does, but they were okay with it because of their denominational affiliation. So anyway,
the church.
I'm not going to go there, but I don't trust myself. So I think that's up to each pastor. If your pastor says, for me, I'm not drinking because the Bible says don't do, good. Go with the Bible and don't drink.
You can't control it.
If you can't control it, yeah, stay away from it. My second reason is my wife, her family. There are several close to her. She actually has had a grandmother who killed herself through alcohol, and has had some other issues with other family members close by her. So if I even talked about having a glass of wine at a wedding or something, which I'm theologically not opposed to, if I even talked about that, it would highly offend my wife. So I made a vow a long time ago. I don't need alcohol. I've never had a desire for it. It's not my sin. Not at all. So anyways, man, I spent 5 minutes on that. I didn't want to.
Never drink in front of a Christian first time you meet them or your counseling.
That's a good idea. Never
My
drink in front of a
grandpa,
Christian until you know him a little more.
He was
Yep.
a pastor in the OPC, and he never drank in front of anybody in church or council, whether they were for or against it, because
Yep.
like you said, you never know.
Let me apply this to church planting real fast, because this is something that is a really big issue right now in church planting. It's even so where state conventions, especially in the Baptist world, are trying to decide on whether or not they should lift the alcohol policy but for the most part, younger church planters want to plant churches that are alcohol friendly. It's just our generation, and more millennial generation, is much more open to alcohol with self-control, no drunkenness, that sort of thing. But so new churches are coming in, but it's the older churches that are help funding. And so you have a lot of old churches say, hey, this young guy, like his theology, he's a great preacher, great evangelism, but he's okay with alcohol, so I'm going to support him. And so right now, denominational groups are really struggling with what to do with this. And so it's hitting down to policy issues. I was at the Baptist State Convention, probably about 4 years ago. It was 4 or 5 years ago, and it was mentioned from the floor, brought up by a random person, that they need to enact strict rules for no alcohol. And the convention said no, because we're not at the point to where we need to start enforcing that on planters. We need to let, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, let them decide that as their own church family. And if we see a pastor being drunk, then of course we have issues. But then, are we going to address all the pastors who are gluttonous? Are we going to address the pastors who are prideful? Are we going to address the pastors who are, and you start listing sins, so you say, then why do we only put alcohol as one, when it's actually, drinking is not a sin. It can be, just like anything else, it can be used for sin. So anyways, I'll stop there for alcohol, but that is a really big issue right now when it comes to church planting, because younger church planners are more open to it. So I've been okay so far because my pastor buddies who are okay with me, who are okay with drinking, they hear my rationale and they highly respect it. But then I can talk to some really old school pastors like, you're not one of those who drink, are you, Sonny? I'm like, no, sir, not this guy. I'm a good Baptist. But anyways,
I'll never do that again.
so anyways,
No, sir.
I'm like, no, sir, I never have, and it's like, oh, good, we don't, so anyways, it was different, but I just keep my mouth shut and thank them for that. Anyway, all right, we have a lot more things to go through. Kyle, you need to keep me more on point, okay? You start every 30 seconds.
No, you were speaking truth in my life, so I'm gonna let you go.
Number 7, a pastor must be peaceful, not violent.
See, this is the one I'm waiting for.
So Andy Kareen,
I need
Andy Kareen was an MMA fighter on the weekend in Belgium, church planner on Sunday. You gotta love that. So anyway,
Man.
pastor must be peaceful, not violent. Have you ever met a pastor who just is angry and has outbursts of anger against his kids? He's violating 2 already. Think about it. I mean, you're not above reproach if you get angry. Like, when your kid is misbehaving, there's a holy anger. Jesus had a holy anger that was very well controlled and appropriate. But majority of the anger that we see is neither well controlled nor appropriate. So, are you, pastor, planter, are you peaceful instead of being violent? So, I've been okay with this because I'm such a wimp. I've actually never been in a fight. I tried to fight a kid for stealing my bike. I chased him down and kind of pulled him off my bike. I was like 10, and he was a little bit smaller than me. I could have punched. I could have knocked him out. And I think my dad even gave me permission to go and handle the kid. Like, my dad's a pastor. He had to deal with that as well. But I couldn't fight. I get the kid down, and he's like, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. I'm like, just leave. And I just like called him a sissy or something. And I got my bike back and we're okay. I've never been in a fight. I can't fight.
Not even an open hand slap.
No. I've never.
Super disappointed right now.
Listen, I got so mad. Listen, hear me. This. You would think I'm odd for this. I one time got so mad at somebody, I hit myself. Because I had to hit something. I'm like, I'm not going to hit them. So I'm like, oh no.
Man, I hit kids
So,
last year when I was an RA. You're not willing to fight some kids stole your bike?
Yeah, so anyways, I'm not very violent. So this one's been okay with it. I have a host of other ones I struggle with. All right, let's keep working through this. Number 8, a pastor must have financial integrity, not greed for gain. We talked about that. As a pastor, are you a wise? We talked about stewardship already, but are you making sure that when money is giving for a new building fund, that it's not going to another line item in the budget? You're like, wait a second, that's not a big deal. People give money to the church, but if they give a designated gift by law, it has to go to where they designated for. Case in point, one of my previous churches where I was youth pastor, there was a line item that one lady in the church gave to. It was a ministry that the church 30 years ago was a little more into because it had some members involved. I can't remember what kind of. It's a good thing. It was a local ministry. It wasn't anything bad. But she would give $100 a month to go towards that. She was the only person out of a 250 member church to give anything towards this. And the church really wanted just the line item to go away. It was an extra thing to keep up with. They weren't really, but she wanted. So instead of her writing a check to that actual ministry group, she was so used and always wanted to write to the church so that they could let her keep doing it. But that $100 a month, $1,200 a year, had to go to what she had said aside for what she designated for. So as a church plan, it's going to be, for me, if I have a giver, someone who says, we really want to give money to buy more Bibles. That's a good thing. I'm going to need money for Bibles in Calgary. But if they say, we want this $500 gift to go towards buying new Bibles for new believers, and I say, man, I really need $300 of it to go towards sports camp equipment for the kids' camps we want to run. That's a good thing to buy, right? Yeah, it's going to be ministry, but they did not designate the money for that. So anyway, so you have financial integrity. Also, you're not greedy for gain. I wasn't actually preparing for tonight, but for what I was doing, but I was reading Apple News and a little article thing about like the richest pastors and how much they're worth. And one of those little slideshows you click through and get. Anyways, I didn't see he was number 1 because he had to like click 5 times to read all of it. Anyways, They got down and, Joseph Prince was on there with 5 million and Creflo Dollar is worth like 30 million, different ones. And so, obviously there's a little bit of greed happening if, you're worth multi millions of dollars, and you're completely okay and you beg your people, you basically tell them that each member needs to give 300 so you can buy a new jet. There's something going on there. We won't go into prosperity gospel, but I could go on that on a rabbit trail for a long time, but we won't. So, I will not talk about a pastor in Charlotte who is very young, Southern Baptist, had
They're
a
not
great
Southern
growing church. They were.
They were, and they got kicked out.
Good.
Heck no.
They got kicked out a while back.
So anyways, I will not talk about such persons, but there are some who I once respected and was really, really burned when he finds out they have like a multi-million-dollar home and how they basically have. So here's the
And he said
here's the
God
strategy.
judges on all.
Some of these churches, when they have a known person, they get a board of directors who are pastors of other mega churches to dictate what that pastor makes, but they're not members of that church. That's what Mark Driscoll has always done. That's why Mark Driscoll made a lot of money at Mars Hill, and that's why he's doing it now in Scottsdale, Arizona. Because they have a board of directors who are made up of mega church pastors who are doing well in a bunch of other places, and they say that board of outside advisors, what do you want to call them, they determine the salary the church needs to pay the guy, not the church itself. So there's very wrong with that. I think there's fine for accountability, for having a board for other things, but when they're dictating the salary, that should be handled by each local church. I believe that strongly in the autonomy of the local church. I'm a good Baptist. You just remember that, man. Pastor must be hospitable. Are you willing to open up your home to people who are drastically unlike you? Will you have a transvestite couple with AIDS come to your house for dinner on a regular basis? Would you be hospitable to that? I'll just leave you with that. You can determine hospitable.
Except for an Irish person.
A pastor must be a lover of good. Titus 1:8, a lover of good. Do you actually seek and enjoy, generally love, seeking the good of other people? All right, so pastor must be self-controlled. This is why I don't drink alcohol. But this can go to a lot of other things. How many hours a week do you play video games? How many hours a week do you watch TV? How many hours a week do you fill in the blank? Are you exhibiting self-control? Nothing wrong with playing video games, watching TV, nothing wrong with that. But we don't have cable in our house because I have no self-control with TV and ice cream. Obviously. Okay, so anyways, pastor must be self-controlled. 12, a pastor must be upright. 13, a pastor must be holy. We talk often about grace. We love God's grace. In our depths of sin, God graciously saves us. But we don't often talk as much about pursuing holiness. Because we assume if I sin, God is going to forgive. I struggle with my identity and holiness. Let's be upright. Integrity in relationships. Yeah. 14, a pastor must be able to teach. So this is where it differs from the qualifications for deacons, right? A deacon does not have to be able to teach, but a pastor should. Okay. Now, this does not say have to be a preaching, but can you convey biblical truths in an organized manner where people can understand it so well that they can convey it to another person? That's teaching. I have failed as a professor if you can never go and tell another person what you have learned from this class or from a course. Have I failed, Nicomas? Okay, good. A pastor must be able to teach. This is a skill. This is why most often those who do the spiritual gifting and they go into a pastor or teacher role, teaching is usually in the top 5. If it's not, it doesn't mean you can never be a pastor. It means that might be a skill that you need to refine and work on a little more, which is fine. Everyone needs help in this. But a pastor, this is one of the unique qualifications separate from a deacon. And last 3, a pastor must be spiritually mature because you're leading others towards spiritual maturity. A pastor must be respectable. Does the community respect you? You probably often heard it said, if your church closed its doors, would your community miss it? Have you ever asked that question? So as you as a pastor or leader, are you leading your church? Are you yourself respecting the community? In our current cultural context, if you step outside of the rural South, where we kind of are here, Winston is not quite rural, but we're 20 minutes away from it. But if you get into the rural South, where my dad is, the community respects the role of pastor. My dad walked into a community he had never lived in before, and within months was highly respected by a lot of different people because he had the role of a pastor. But that is in the deep rural south of North Carolina. You go up to Calgary, they don't know what a pastor is. You go to Boston, there's no respect for that. And Boston is a highly Catholic city. And so to them, a priest is what's important. They don't even trust their priest, though, because of all the scandals and things. So you have 3% evangelical in Boston, 5% evangelical in Calgary. The role of pastor is no longer respected in our society. Why? We're now bigots because we preach that gay sex is sinful. We're homophobic because we preach that. We are misogynistic because we don't believe that women should have the one role in the church of pastor where there's a dozen of other roles and things to fulfill, but the one that God has set apart for the role of men. Why? God ordained it. I didn't write scripture. But we're misogynistic because we don't believe in lady pastors. Even though I have advocated for Lottie Moon, as you have heard, who preached and taught but never pastored. Right? Anyways, I'm not that hardcore on that. But we will not be multiplying ladies for pastoring. I do believe that. And you can fight with me all day if you want to. Sorry, Faith. That's the one job I don't think you should be able to do, even though you can probably do it better than all of us. So, number 17, a pastor must be respectful. This community respect them. How do you build rapport in a community or a culture that's hostile to Christianity? How do you gain the respect? 17, last one. A pastor must be an example to the flock. This comes from 1 Peter 5:3. Be thou an I can't remember what he says exactly, but something about being an example to those as you're leading them, overseers. 1 Peter 5:3. You want to find it and read it, Nicomas?
Yeah. Well, you want me to start at verse 3? Or verse 2 and 3?
Do 2 and 3.
Okay. Shepherd God's flock among you, not overseeing out of compulsion, but freely according to God's will, not for the money, but eagerly, not lording it over those those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock.
So the whole thing, so this rounds out, it kind of bookends above reproach because you're an example. You're an example to them for their time management, for their holiness. You're an example to them as you teach. You're an example to them in your marriage, in your parenting, all those things. You're being an example to those. So I'm going way over time. So let's go quickly through some practical qualifications. All right. Here are our practical characteristics. All right. So this is coming from Charles Ridley, Charles Ridley was a missiologist, church planting coach back in I think the 80s or so. He basically developed a scale, a rubric, if you will, for assessing church planters. Now, some of these kind of mirror what we talked about 2 weeks ago when we talked about personal wiring and different things. But these are really, I think there's 13. Yes, there's 13, and these are basically characteristics of successful church planters. Now we're going to kind of, excuse me, I'm burping up my spaghetti from dinner. We're going to kind of end tonight with talking about a church planter specifically. I know not all of you are called to that, but if you're going to be involved in any kind of revitalization effort or replanting effort or a church planting effort, these are going to apply to you in a very different way than they may to an established church pastor, only because of the type of job you're doing. That's it. All right. So here's some practical characteristics from Charles Ridley. First, does the person who has a characteristic of a successful church planter is one who has visioning capacity. Can you help a group of people see the future of God's blessing in that local church? So our vision for Calgary is saturating Calgary with the gospel of Christ. Saturating, feeling it. Well, how are we going to do that? We have to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. So in my mind, I say if we want to fill the city with the gospel, we've got to mobilize an army of disciple makers of laity, and also those who are stepping into pastoral roles. We've got to be sending them out, mobilizing them, and multiplying on a very regular basis. So you have a visioning capacity. Can you see what it needs to be and walk your church to where it needs to, where it needs to be? Number 2, intrinsically motivated. Do you have a deep desire and commitment to being excellent in what you're doing? Are you just motivated to do this? Because it's not a glamorous job. You don't get a book deal after your church has survived 2 years. You don't get a big pay raise. Right now, I am completely dependent on nice people supporting us financially. on individuals and churches who are giving a monthly. I'm completely dependent on that. If they stop, I can't feed my family in Calvary until a church up there can actually. But I'm still motivated to go and do the work because my faith says, you know what, God's got this, and He does. Do you have a high energy? Are you physically even have the stamina to handle the workload? Are you motivated to push through when you're utterly exhausted because you were hanging out with Fred who tried to kill himself at 2 a.m. this morning? And you're just now getting back and it's 8 a.m. and you got to help get the kids to school and do everything else. It's a physically demanding job. A lot of people don't realize that about pastors. I watched my dad do this, and I watched him have a heart attack when he was 49 because he was doing too much and not letting others help him. He was too stressed, but someone was having surgery, he was there at 4 a.m. with him in the hospital to pray for them, and he would stay there all day. You can't go to bed at midnight, get up at 4 a.m. every day and expect to stay. Okay, so anyways, intrinsically motivated to keep yourself going. Number 3, creates ownership of ministry. You own your ministry. Are you able to establish an identity for your congregation who also are owning the fact that they need to be on mission? Are you able to get people to commit to the vision that you have for this new church, or this new church movement? 4, spousal cooperation. We kind of talked about this before. Does your spouse agree with you that you are called into this role? For a long time, I thought that I was. Then I was really questioning it and thought maybe I wasn't. But it was really Jill who was starting to speak into, I really think this is you. As she was learning more about it, learning more about lostness and needing different things, are you completely agreed upon with your spouse? Because God has not called just the husband in the ministry. He calls the whole family. So Kirk hasn't really voiced his opinion yet, but once he will, we'll listen. Number 5, can you relate to the unchurched well? Are you comfortable being around unsafe people? I found this is one of the ones that I found probably the easiest of a lot of these, was that I used to, as a kid, I remember my parents sent me to Christian school because they didn't want me to be influenced by a public school system. And we have different opinions about that, but looking back now, I wish that I was in a public school growing up, because why couldn't I have been a gospel witness? They had me in a Christian school for the wrong motives. They had me in a Christian school to protect me from dirty people. But now I went to a public school for 2 years and found some of the best Christians I've ever met. And I go to my Christian school and I'm like, what's this? I left Hamlet Junior, saw real Christians who were in the middle of, messed up 14-year-olds. I mean, there's one girl who was a friend of mine, and, she comes crying to me because she was ashamed that she had lost her virginity that weekend before. She was 14. She's one of my good friends, and we had talked about purity, and she asked, if I wanted to remain pure until marriage. We had talked about that kind of stuff, and she came up to me crying. So we were in the middle of this. Now, you're to a Christian school, and there wasn't that much spiritual anything happening because you didn't have to. So anyways, do you relate to unchurched people well? Are you able to have them in your home? Are you able to hang out with them in their space? Can you hear them saying the very dirty things that they're talking about? And yes, you're heartbroken, but you're not disgusted to where you just leave because you heard a dirty word. Okay. So last year of my youth ministry, I heard the F word more than I can ever want to go back. I mean, often because we were hanging out with lost people. And I had students, because we were playing football. We had a partner ministry. We were playing football with these guys, Wade and his crew, and Nicomas. And Wade was very respectful for the most part. He knew we were a church group. These other guys didn't care that we were a church group. And had one 6th grader in the youth group come up to me and said, Dustin, he just said the F word. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I can't remember the kid's name. I can't remember who it was. I said, I'm really sorry, but they don't know Jesus. So make sure you don't use it. Make sure you don't use the word back to them. But be kind to them. And I would tell my teens before we would go, I said, we are not here to clean up their dirty mouths. We're here to show them Jesus. Let Him clean up their dirty mouth. So anyways, can you be around the unchurched and be comfortable, but also be heartbroken? Number 6, effectively builds relationships. A church planter, their wiring and characteristics is someone who can effectively build relationship. Now, relationship is not just, hey, I can get to know a stranger, have a 30-minute chat with them, and never have a conversation again. Can you find ways to continue and foster and build a relationship effectively that leads to the gospel? Number 7, are you committed to church growth? It goes back to that intrinsic motivation. But are you committed to seeing your church grow because lost people come to Christ and you're mobilizing every man, woman, and child to help engage and love and share the gospel with every man, woman, and child? So are you committed to that? Do you want to see that happen? Or you say, you know what, once we get 20 people, that's cool. We'll keep those same 20. And we'll be all right. Nothing wrong with having a church of 20, but it better be a new 20 every other year. Right? Because you're sending people out and getting new people in. Number 8, responsive to community. Are you have your ear to the railroad tracks, your ear to the ground, listening out for the heartbeat of the community? What are the needs of your area? Are you mobilizing your church to respond to those needs? Are you reorganizing your church programs in order to meet the needs of the community? Number 9, utilizes giftedness of others. This goes back to stewarding people. Are you able to see, you know what? Nokomis is really good at discipling young guys one-on-one. I'm gonna make sure that's the only thing that he has to focus on doing. You know, Hutch, he's got a really good talent for preaching. I'm going to make sure that he preaches at least once a month for these next 6 months, and then he's going to start taking over. And then within a year and a half, he's going to be the pastor of the church as we step out. You know, Faith really has a knack. You do music, don't you? No. Tonight you do. Faith really has a knack for leading in worship. She's going to become our full worship leader, and she's going to help grow the worship band, but also help multiply it. As we send a church out, we can send them with a band as well. So anyway, are you able to look at the other's gifting and start placing them in slots and roles that really maximize that? Number 10, are you flexible and adaptable? This is a big one. If you do not have a flexible personality, if your OCD takes control and you cannot divert from the set course, then you're probably not wired to be a church planner. Because you've got to be flexible. I mean, think about it. Depending on the kind of model, approach that you can have 300 people in your launch Sunday. Oh, this is really, really great. That means we're going to have to double up our kids ministry. We got to have more people at the doors greeting. We got to have more of this. And then the next Sunday, after launch Sunday, only 85 show up. Can you adapt to a change in numbers like that? Can you adapt when someone, and I had this head on when we were visiting Boston 2.5 years ago. We stayed with a church planter who had just been up there for about a year. He moved up with 2 other couples. Those 2 other couples had left in the last 6 months. And they were like co-pastors with him, sharing big responsibility. I only think this guy may have been the lead, I can't remember. They left him like, we moved up here with you, we love you, but this is just not our place. They actually had started renting a 3-bedroom home for each couple. They were all living in one home together. Each couple was going to have their own room because they didn't have kids at the time. They were all going to have their own room. Then they all leave. Now they're stuck with rent for another, however many several months for a 3-bedroom apartment that was super expensive in downtown Boston. They're stuck with it because they adapted and were very flexible, and they started renting out one of their rooms to interns at other church plants. So they were making a little bit of income to help, some that. And Jill and I were able to stay there because they had another extra bedroom. So Jill and I were able to stay there with them. So they were hosting potential church planners and getting paid by the North American Mission Board. So it was cheaper to pay $50 to them a night than $100 at a motel. So they were adapting to the situation. A lot of things you have to be flexible and adapt to. Can you build group cohesiveness? Can you get in a group of people and mobilize them to accomplish a certain task? So that you have to be a people person in that sense. You got to be able to talk with people of different personalities and different characteristics and strengths and things, and get a group together as one body to go after something together. Are you resilient? This is going to be a test for us at different levels. We're going from a non-winter climate to a very winter climate. And I'm going to be resilient enough, my skinny little frame, and I don't do well in cold, I'm going to be cuddling with Nico a lot. It's going to be scary. But are you resilient? I don't know yet if I'm resilient to the weather. I don't know. Ask me after next winter how I fared in 30. I've never lived in 30 below. Some of you online probably have lived in 30 below. God bless you. Send me a coat. Give me some pointers because I have never done this.
Change for the tires.
Change for the tires and wear layers. But wool socks is one of the things they told me. Buy a lot of thick wool socks. But are you resilient? Can you also face whenever everyone else on your team has left you? Whenever the people you were excited about, the new believers you were discipling, are now going back to their old ways, when your lay volunteer team has been cut by over a third, and you don't know how you can run even a full kids ministry next Sunday, you get all these things, Are you resilient? Will you push through and still be able to get the job done and not lose your mind? It's tough because when you're starting a new work, you go to an established church and everything just kind of runs. Someone's not there, we can find a substitute. But a lot of times in a new church start, you don't have that yet. You haven't got to that point where things can run smoothly and whatnot. And the last one, exercise is faith. This has been the biggest lesson for me in the last year in exploring where God was sending us, was learning. I was telling someone the other day, I now understand what faith is. I'm almost 30 years old and have been a Christian since I was 12. And I did not know what faith was until last year. Of how God has just opened up things that He has done, things I was super concerned about and worried about, and He said, I got it covered. And it just showed me faith is completely relying on something other than yourself. So, do you exercise that faith? Read the biography of George Mueller, and you'll get to read a good story of faith. So, you've put up with me for a whole semester, so thanks.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions?